Thank you to the Center for Communications and Stern School of Business, of course. And thank you all for coming out. This is really a wonderful turnout, so I'm super excited to basically kick it over to the panelists really quickly. But before I do that, I just kind of want to find out who's in the room. Quickly raise your hand if you're a filmmaker. Yes, if you're in business school. Tonight we're going to talk about the changing shape of and the changing landscape of the film industry and what that looks like now, how to navigate it, the tools that you need to get through it, and our fantastic panelists, who I will let introduce themselves in just a moment, will tell you kind of how they came into the film industry, how they are finding their way through it, and the skills that you might need as you're on your way into that landscape. So why don't we start with Forrest?
Sure, yeah. So my name is Forrest Connor. I am a graduate of the dual degree program between Tisch and Stern. So I actually took a class I sat somewhere back there for macroeconomics and did really poorly. So this is kind of surreal that I would be at the front of the room. I specialize in production, so I'm a producer. I'm working on 2 films right now. One is a documentary that is a feature-length film about a basketball player trying to make the NBA before he turns 30. And then I'm also in pre-production on and financing for a narrative feature about a misdiagnosed sociopath who was trying to date women without killing them. It's a dark comedy. And I also work full-time as a data scientist at a company called VHX. We're a platform for internet-native distribution of any video content. We started out with comedy specials and films, but we moved on to basically anything. We've had really great successes with people coming from YouTube web series and then selling on our platform and making a bunch of money. So we're really excited. I'd love to talk about that as much as possible.
Thank you. I am Artel Great. I am happy to be here. I am a social practice artist and a adjunct professor here at the NYU Tisch School of the Arts in the Cinema Studies Department. I am also the founder of Project Catalyst, which we'll talk a lot about. It is a platform that has been described as the multicultural version of Netflix, which I'll take that. We're interested in really kind of engaging underserved audiences with an opportunity to share their work in a very particular way over the top and through mobile technology. So we're reimagining the empowering possibilities of cinema and media and how we can bring people together to connect around shared values and shared ideas.
Hi, I'm Shruti Ganguly. I also went to the dual MBA and MFA program between Stern and Tisch, and I'm pretty immersed in the digital space, but I also make movies. After I graduated from the MBA and MFA, and I was the first graduate of that program, so the first guinea pig, it's not too bad afterwards, I went to MTV and developed content for a digital platform there. And then I was at Condé Nast in the entertainment division and produced and focused on content for Vogue and produced a series called 73 Questions. And then left that in the fall to then rejoin Nylon, where I had worked before grad school. And I'm their VP of TV and video. And my hair is purple for a Nylon story that I have to write, not because I had NYU pride. I wish I could say that. But I'm writing an essay about it, so I will share that. But in terms of my film background, I've produced about 4 feature films so far. I work mostly with James Franco, and I have a slate of movies coming up as a producer and a director. So it's a range of different things.
And I wanted to hear from you all, because I know growing up, my conception of the film industry and what filmmaking is very different from the conception of the film industry as I see it now, and even different from the way that I understood the film industry when I became interested in actually participating in it in any peripheral sense. So I wonder if you guys could all kind of talk about how your expectations of the film industry changed as it changed. Basically 2008, recession, film goes crazy, the internet happens, it's a thing, YouTube actually matters, and I don't know if any of you expected that, but I certainly didn't. So if you could just talk about, your expectations, what changed for you, how you're dealing with that, what's exciting.
When I was actually producing my first feature and seeing how it was hard to get money, even though you had Oscar-winning talent, Oscar-nominated talent, and even though the budgets were low, it was still difficult to sell because it was a movie about a poet. So who's going to watch it? And so there were all these different factors where at one point you thought a cast can sell a film, and that's still very much the attitude from the agency perspective. And then you also saw your classmates from Tisch or from other, or just even colleagues and friends making their movie with that hope on, if my movie gets into Sundance, I have it made. And there's still very much that attitude. But if you look at the numbers, when you look at the business of independent film and technology, and the decrease in barriers to entry has been a big reason for more movies to get made, the numbers don't really make sense because you have about thousands of submissions for about 120 spots.
Right.
And most of those movies don't necessarily sell at the festival. So a lot of money has been invested in making very expensive art. And so it's very interesting when you look at it and you ask, why should somebody invest in a movie when you do look at those numbers and they make very little sense? And so I don't want to talk too much, but that's the platform for it.
Yeah, and I agree wholeheartedly. When I decided to come to the dual degree program, I'd been making short films in the Bay Area in San Francisco, and was like, I love making movies. I'm gonna make movies, and now I'll learn how to make money off of them. It's gonna be great, and it'll be perfect career change. And then you go through 3 years of graduate school learning that it's almost impossible to make any kind of actual money off of films if you go through the system that Shruti was describing, because thinking sort of like an economist, you're talking about markets. And the market that you're going to with a feature film from the independent side is something like Sundance, or something like, at maybe Cannes if you're lucky, or a place where it is a very small group of people who are very dissimilar from the people who actually watch your film. So you are sort of pitching to one market with your film in hopes that they will then display it for you to some other market that is at this point in time unbeknownst to you. And I think that there has been a point now where we have seen some success in people going directly to their market to begin with. A lot of people have found funding on Kickstarter and found funding with crowdfunding sources. And I don't know that that's the complete answer. It is the complete answer if you're making a very low budget film. And it's also a great way to show social proof if you are reaching out for investors. But more than anything, I think those people are really talented at finding their audiences from the beginning, from the conception. And if you can do that, you no longer have to worry about selling to, Fox Searchlight or Focus, God bless them. But instead, you sell directly to your audience. And I find that to be a market without inefficiencies, because you have a product, you price it, and they purchase it. And that takes away a lot of the problems that filmmakers run into, I think. It's very different than what I expected coming into the school, right. But I think seeing those successes has been a really beneficial thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for me, I've taken an entirely kind of calculated but circuitous path, in the sense that I'm from Chicago, so the idea of the film industry for me was something you observed, something you watched, not something you actually participated in. When I started as an artist doing performance art, spoken word, comedy, right, in the end of the 90s, there was this really interesting period around 98 when I graduated. There was this really interesting period that I didn't really understand, but as I understand it now, it was called what we call it now, the Black New Wave, where you had filmmakers like Spike Lee, where you had filmmakers like John Singleton, Matty Rich. You had Fox as the fourth network that was now creating this kind of segmented market structure where you had shows like Rock, Living Single, Martin, so there was a lot of hope that I had at that point. I was like, okay, I'm going to become a performer and I'm going to actually engage in front of the camera. And what I ended up doing was becoming a performance artist and traveling all over the Midwest, creating, and had an opportunity to be seen by a casting director. And she was like, "Oh, you should come and audition for this film." And so I auditioned for a film. I looked at the script and I was like, "Oh, this is horrible." I threw it in the garbage, and then maybe like 2 weeks later, a friend of mine came up to me and he said, "Yeah, they're doing this big movie in Chicago. It's gonna be huge. Paramount Pictures and MTV. It's gonna be incredible." I said, "What's the name of it?" He said, "Something about the dance." The dance? I said, "Save the Last Dance." He said, "Yeah, it's gonna be huge." I said, "Oh, damn." So I called my agent and I said, "Yeah, I made up something." And she got me another audition, and I went in and ended up getting a co-starring role in a film that ended up changing my whole life. And from that, I ended up moving to Los Angeles to pursue full time, and was really successful, nominated for awards, everything like that. But right around 2001, after the kind of 9/11 events, I started to notice the shift where there was something real happening in the entertainment industry where smaller, kind of more personal films were being more and more marginalized, and there were more films that were huge budgets, like tentpole films started to really emerge around this point. And that's when I really started to see that that new wave that was happening at the end of the 90s was over. At this point, started to create and pioneer the web series. But there wasn't a YouTube at that point. So I was creating online what I called internet sitcoms that I didn't even have the language to articulate what that really was. But no one really understood like exactly what I was doing. But they liked it and thought it was, good. But then there reached a point where I realized how much I didn't know about the industry. And that's when I decided to go to film school. And I went to UCLA Film School. And ended up becoming the first Black American valedictorian to graduate from UCLA Film School. And then I was like, "Oh, thank you, sir." And ended up going to grad school, and now and ended up getting a PhD. And people said, "Well, you're an artist. Why do you want to get a PhD in like cinema?" And the reality of that is that the more films you see, the more you know, the more you grow. You remember that little PSA, NBC? Oh, yeah. The more you know, that's real. So where I am now is realizing that the barriers of entry have diminished to a large degree, but now the barriers of distribution have also diminished. But the question becomes, how do we raise our level of media visibility? And that's now what I'm embarking on. If I was doing the web series 10 years ago, what I'm doing now is really reimagining distribution to empower people with diverse voices.
I love that you just said that. I love that you went into what you envision. Now, your concept of the film industry changed, but it doesn't mean that you're locked out of it. In fact, because of things like Project Catalyst and your ability to use technology to reach your audience, as Forrest is saying, you have more ability maybe to get your work out there, to reach for more media visibility.
It was very interesting to come back to Nylon when I had worked there 6 years ago when online video was very new still for a magazine brand or a media company, and to kind of come back to a brand that I was familiar with in a very saturated place. I have a couple of lenses through which I decide how we make and program content. And the first thing I ask people, and I train people if they're pitching to me, filmmakers or producers or actors and so on, or even internally different teams, I ask, would you watch it? And then I say, would your friends watch it and share it? And that, if you can say yes to both, and more so, then we will consider making it. And one of the great things with making a series like 73 Questions for Vogue and Condé Nast, which was the biggest series for the entire company, and I'd produced that for the first video with Sarah Jessica Parker within 3 days of starting, that video was shared within my network, irrespective of my own involvement with it. And that was really exciting to see. So I think if you are a content creator, to see that kind of stuff that you're making generated, and then kind of flashing back, when I moved to the States for undergrad, and also I'm Indian, but I grew up in the Middle East, in Oman, with very little connection with the business of film and entertainment. So anyway, fast forward to when I graduated from undergrad and I moved to New York, and I didn't study filmmaking in undergrad. I did art and economics. Years later, I did an MBA and an MFA, so I clearly am still indecisive. But I directed a video for some friends and learned to edit, as a friend taught me how to edit at Columbia, a film school, and put it together. It took me 2 months to make, and that ended up, the timing was lucky, and it was like a spoof music video just before the Super Bowl, and it was my friends making something called a Super Fan Shuffle, and it was like the SNL Super Fans and the Chicago Bears Super Bowl Shuffle, and it just so happened that the Bears were in the Super Bowl that year, and it's not because I knew that, because I didn't really watch American football. It was just lucky, and that video ended up going back then on the homepage of Yahoo, NBC, AOL, and it was just done completely without knowing strategic timing and an audience and a market. And I think there still are those exciting elements, while everybody and every media company now is trying to figure out like the strategy, how to make things go viral. And of course there is paid marketing and so on. But sometimes really in this space, the best ideas just win. And I also think that's true for film to a large extent. You have sometimes the most inventive movies that didn't have stars attached to it, like Beasts of the Southern Wild, for example, which was just so fresh and exciting. And that got an Oscar. I mean, we don't even need to go into the actual business of that movie, because that's depressing in terms of returns.
Yes.
But at the same time, it launched the career of Ben Zeitlin, who then got signed to William Morris. So a lot of times with independent filmmakers, it's like, make your idea, make sure nobody else has done it, put your own spin on it, because you're really worried, if you really are interested in being in this business, focus on your one film, but think about your third, because you want a career, and you want people to understand the type of movie you're going to make. And sometimes it takes you 3 films to get noticed, and I mean, and that's still hard to do, but you have to be persistent. And I think the internet sometimes makes you not feel, it makes you think it should come very easily.
Right.
But it's hard, so.
It is hard. I mean, I'm working, so VHX is a film company in sorts. Like, you can upload your film and sell it using our platform, but we don't pay for your, we do not acquire the rights to your film. It's non-exclusive. If you sell with us, you can put it on iTunes, it's fine. So we are not in the same business overall. We're more of a tech company, and in the sense that we are a tech company, we are constantly iterating, and that is the one thing that bothers me the most about the film industry, is no one iterates, because it is so costly and so time extensive. Like, I guess that is costly to make a feature film. So if you're making a feature film and you have to make 3 before you actually get good at it, and it takes you 2 years to find financing, to shoot it, to edit it, and you're doing all of those things while also trying to make a living and eat, that's kind of important things to stay alive to make those films. You're talking about, at best 6 years to make the number of films that you need to make before you actually get maybe noticed and maybe good at your job. And so that's why I think web series are important, and shorter form content's important. I think people make a mistake and they make a web series and they think, oh, well, I'm going to make it like a TV show. It's not a TV show. It's on the internet. You can get away with so much more on the internet.
Right.
And I always hate sitting in your position in the audience in these panels and not being given actionable information. So I'm going to tell you what to do, and I want one of you in this room to do it, and I want you to make $1 million. And I want you to tell me that you made $1 million, and then it'll be in 3 years from now, but do it.
Maybe your panelists will do this too, your fellow panelists.
Yeah, so, okay, so there was, 3 years ago, there was a guy by the name of Dennis Dortch. He's an NYU grad, I believe.
Black and Sexy, baby.
Black and Sexy TV. He started a YouTube channel called Black and Sexy TV. I don't need to tell you any more about it, because if you hear that title, you know exactly what I'm talking about. They're serialized content. They have, I think now they're up to 5 different shows that they do 10 episodes apiece. They did 2 years on YouTube for free. They made money off of ad revenue, which was enough to sustain the production, but they were 5-minute episodes. They were shot on 5Ds. Very, very sustainable production. They worked very hard to find their audience, to get specific people interested in their specific content, And then if somebody's not interested, like people, like advertisers may not want to sponsor them because of the name of the channel is Black and Sexy. Maybe that doesn't work with some advertisers. It's fine. They don't need the advertisers. They have their audience. And that is the most precious thing to them. They're on YouTube responding to comments all the time. They're on Twitter, they're on Instagram. They're actively engaging their audience. And if you do that and you make content you absolutely believe in and find a way to monetize 10% of it, give away 90%, monetize 10%, get email addresses, get people on your mailing list and talk to them, you will make a bunch of money, enough money to sustain production going forward. And as far as I'm concerned, if you can make a living making content, you won. You don't have to make $20 million because somebody bought your film and you got lucky. Like that's the lottery. Like you just want a career doing what you love, and if this is what you love, that's how you do it. My opinion.
Awesome. Yeah.
That's real.
Yeah.
That's real.
Good advice from Forrest Connor at
Yeah, no,
VHS.
that's-
And now I'm done. Great to see you.
From each of your perspectives, which are 3 unique perspectives, how do you find your audience? Forrest, go.
Great question. So you put out a lot of content and see who comes in organically. You also, every single person you meet, you say, hey,
How do
I'm
you
doing
see
this.
who comes in organically?
There's a couple ways. One is on your website. First thing that people see should be a place to say, insert your email here. Incentivize them to do that by giving them something free if they sign up. It doesn't have to be anything costly to you. It's not like a free t-shirt. It's just a video that you can provide for free. Give them access to constantly engaged updates, things like that.
Okay.
Also, every person you meet so this is what I actually like film festivals for. It's a great place to meet people who are interested in content. Get them to sign up for your mailing list and get a cheapo like tablet that is good enough to show off your website and hand it to people and say, hey, if you're interested in hearing more about what I'm doing, sign up here. If you meet somebody at a bar, you have a great conversation, say, oh, by the way, I do this thing. And in New York, odds are they're like, oh, great, I'm an actor. I'd love to be in it.
Right.
And then
Right.
and then reach out, and then they'll reach out to their networks for you. And all they have to do is drive traffic back to this website and get people to sign up. And then you can see those signups growing. But in addition to that, enable something called Google Analytics. If you don't know what it is, they have a very simple tutorial online. Just Google it, and it will track traffic coming into your site. It'll tell you where it's coming from in the country. It'll tell you if it happens from like links that you've put out there, so you can see if like a link you put on Facebook is working to drive traffic. Those analytics are sort of my day-to-day. So sometimes I take them for granted, but that is a great way to understand like the effect of things you're doing. And then, as Shruti said, there's always paid advertisements. And if you're trying to sell video or trying to get people to engage in video, advertise on platforms that focus on video. Like Facebook ads are cool, and some of them convert better than others. But like YouTube's the place to be.
Awesome. So if Forrest didn't take all of the ways, Artel, can you talk a little bit about finding your audience, maybe specifically in the context of Project Catalyst, as it's been so successful in your kind of triangulated approach?
If you think about who you know and what they like and what you like, then pretty much you have a network already and you have an audience already. Now it's up to you to start to engage them and to engage them with consistency. See, that's one thing that you didn't mention. Once you have people who are kind of hip to you or watching your web series, the biggest thing that I've noticed that is the inability for people to sustain that. So they approach it in a way, and then it's like, oh, I had a really great web series, and then you don't see them anymore. And then, so the question becomes, how do you engage with consistency the type of quality that will then create a brand around? See, people throw that out. Oh yeah, I'm working on my brand. You don't really have a brand. You got like 500 followers on Twitter. It's like, yeah, you got a little bit more work to do. So we do events all over. So we connect people through the mobile space, but then at the same time, we're interested in connecting people in offline spaces as well. So how do you start to connect with your audience in a physical sense, not just in this virtual sense? Because I think that the shared experience is also very important as well.
Good luck.
So in addition,
There's a lot covered.
In addition to all these things, I think it's really important to note that your audience is very different per project you're going to work on. Independent film space, things like Kickstarter and other crowdsourcing tools are also very helpful to help you find an audience and a community that are going to support your film. And I almost always try and make the directors I work with, depending on the budget, try and raise a portion of that, because it forces you to ask as a filmmaker, you're forced to answer the question of is there an audience for my film? Who else cares to see it? Because you're going to spend 2 years of your life making it, and you want people to see it. And you would ideally like to sell it. The audience is going to vary. On the branded side, for Nylon, for example, it has a very specific type of audience and person who engages with it. And already, like, that type of person tends to be a lot more creative. That audience skews a little more female, definitely in that M world, millennial world. And they're very passionate and engaged. And it's interesting when alternate culture is now becoming mainstream. And at the same time, while we do engage with that current audience, I'm very focused on growing it. So I'm experimenting. So I commission a lot of filmmakers to try new things that I also am not seeing being made. Because I'm not interested in making things that already exist. So, for example, and I also do ask, like, why should someone give 2 minutes of their life to watch this versus do anything else? It better be worth their time. And I think that people are getting smarter, so you have to give your audience a little more credit, hopefully. And so, for example, for Fashion Week, this year, instead of covering Fashion Week, which is definitely a lot of content for Nylon, on the video side, instead we did a deal with Lyft, and we put cameras in the cars, and our fashion editors picked up their friends who are other editors from Vanity Fair or different stylists, and our coverage of Fashion Week was in between the shows, which were more insider conversations. For Street Style, instead of just shooting out on a camera, we created a customized Nylon drone, so we did Street Style with the drone. So I'm doing fashion and beauty shoots with a drone. But the idea is, with every piece of content you make, it's going to find a different audience. But then you have to be aware of, if you already have an audience, how do you grow it? Because you have to not only feed into that, but you also still have to stay true to your brand without selling out. So you have to know what your brand represents.
Right, what your voice
So,
is.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Actually, I'm a big fan of selling out. Just make sure you know who you're selling to.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what we're really talking about here is that filmmakers can find a place for themselves as long as they have identified that environment and those people. And that's key. So if you want your voice to be heard in this new landscape of filmed entertainment, your number one step is go find those people who are going to listen to you and grow from there. So from each of you, I would like to hear a 1 or 2 word answer on the following. A new tool to consider using, Shruti, you mentioned a couple of them, and a new skill that they have to learn in order to be successful.
Oh, I would say try everything that you want to do, because this is the best time to experiment.
And a tool for that experimentation, do you have one for that, or?
Find people who you collaborate.
Good, well done. What about a new skill for them to learn?
Audience.
Metrics.
Yeah.
Okay,
I would say you make things for something.
sure.
Project Catalyst.
Yeah, well done. That was it, 2 words.
Right.
Perfect. A new skill that somebody needs to learn.
Critical thinking.
Project Catalyst.
Critical thinking, right?
Okay. Excellent. And a piece of accepted wisdom that you might have received in film school that you should throw out, given what the industry looks like now.
There's only
Yeah.
one path.
It's not just Sundance to the industry,
Yes.
to Hollywood.
No.
It's also...
And segmentation analysis is another thing we should think about.
Oh,
Segmentation
hashtag.
analysis.
segmentation analysis.
Project
Forrest,
Catalyst.
do you know the questions? Or do you need
Tool that everyone should use.
Boom.
VHX.
Yes.
obviously.
Why? I should have been saying it. Like,
I'm keeping it 100.
We're free. Why not?
Yeah. A skill?
Skill. Learn how to build a website and just use Squarespace. It's easy.
Great.
Do it. Don't waste time.
And what's key on that website?
So
What's key on that website?
oh, get people's email addresses when they visit.
MailChimp.
Yeah, Mailchimp.
It syncs. It's really great. And the advice that you think that people should just throw out.
Yeah, don't worry about being perfect. Make mistakes. Make them often and make them publicly. Because people will
not too publicly.
depending on the mistake. People will love your mistakes more than you hate them. And they like, so for instance, Black and Sexy gets a lot of comments like specifically about the story. Like, I didn't think your story was like great in this moment, but they get to reply and have a conversation. And that's how you keep your audience. So make mistakes.
Cool. The last thing I want to ask before we turn it over to the audience is is there anybody or any show or person or company, maybe not even in film, but who you think is doing it right, who you think is reaching and engaging an audience in an innovative way that is maybe lean, is maybe relatively low impact? I don't know. You define success, but tell me who you think is doing it right.
I'd say Louis C.K. And here you have somebody who's pretty established, and he did something that changed how someone who could probably make a lot of money doing something a little more traditional did something more inventive. And I think that, like I said, that he's somebody else who's experimenting. And you have nothing to lose. You have more to lose by not doing it.
There are a couple people. I think Ted Hope is doing and thinking about things in a really interesting way. And outside of the immediate kind of film entertainment idea in a broader kind of artistic capacity, I think that Theaster Gates is doing really amazing things about how to reimagine the empowering possibilities of art. And what he's done is kind of gone all over the world and has taken abandoned buildings and kind of amplified them in totally new ways. So really, I think that Theaster Gates is really doing interesting things in terms of the art world and how to kind of think bigger about things that other people would ordinarily cast aside, and finding beauty in ugliness.
So mine's not a person, it's a company. I think Etsy is doing a lot of great stuff. They're a platform, for those of you who don't know, it's a two-sided marketplace. People can build crafts and make a business out of it and then sell those crafts online to people. And so to me that speaks loudly, because they empower people and give them the tools to create their own businesses and in many ways find their own audiences, sort of like what we've been talking about, for things that they're creatively pursuing. I have a friend who has worked on sets with me as a costume designer, but she also makes tiny like furniture and tiny books, and it's like, I don't know who buys this stuff because it's not me, but she can actually make quite a bit of money doing that and have a living to do the other things she wants to do. So I hope that one day we all have the ability to to have our own projects like that, where we can sort of live off of the things that we love to do.
Cool. So experiment, find a new use for broken or discarded places. That's how I'm characterizing it. And use technology to make the stuff that you like, right? And that makes you money, ideally. Cool. Questions from the audience?
I'm Elizabeth. I work in the media department at the Metropolitan Opera as an associate content producer. So my question is, and I guess it's more geared towards Shruti, how do you experiment and try new things like the drone and the taxi cab thing while still keeping your brand alive in the aesthetic that you want present, I guess, and especially working with different filmmakers or freelancers?
I think you really know, you have a sense of what your audience could like, and you also have a sense of what could work. And you put a bunch of those things together. And so with the nylon drone, for example, I made sure it was pink and glitter. It wouldn't be like, black. Like even certain things like a color, like an aesthetic, really impact, your brand is associated with sometimes with colors, with a certain type of visual style. So, and I think that this brand in particular deals with creativity and invention. So even the format and medium and way in which that content is made can be experimental. So the process as well. So I think with the Metropolitan Opera, and I think there's amazing marketing and branding around the Met Opera now more than ever, it's actually a really exciting time to kind of look at some, possibly I'm just going to throw out some ideas, where it would be like bringing a celebrity to the opera for the first time. And their experience. You take the essence of what you have access to and what your brand is about and put it in a scenario that isn't expected. I think the unexpected is very important in making great content. That's why you watch it.
What would you suggest for if someone already has their project in mind and they're just trying to get the perfect team together, how they could pull the people in, especially everyone has their different projects they're working on, and even if you have $1 million idea project, just trying to get people interested in it?
I feel very lucky that I built a film community when I went to NYU and also maintained the relationships with people I collaborated with before, being in New York and having just gone to different film festivals and screenings and connected with people and like enjoyed the same type of films or content. And because it really is a relationship business, and whether like and it's really fun ultimately and rewarding to work with your friends, grow with your friends, and then make money with them. So I think it is really important to build that community and team around you.
Right. Start talking to people. You can do it in various ways. There are tons and tons of groups on Facebook, Twitter, people who you already know. If you have interest in particular people that you want to work with, you can reach out to them directly a lot of times through various platforms, and then just start talking about your idea, talking about your passion, because when you start talking about your passion to other people, you will find a constituency. You will find that people, oh wow, people are also passionate about this same thing. And then you say, oh, well, you know, I'm doing this project. What you doing next week? So, you know, it's a way that you can really start to engage people, but it really starts with you sharing your passion, because when you share your passion, you'll attract magnetically people who are also passionate about those same things and who share your values. But you have to be vocal, otherwise people won't know that you exist.
Yeah. The one thing I always say is be aggressively yourself, because if you are the most you can be, nobody who doesn't want to tolerate you will try and tolerate you,
Right.
and everybody who loves you will love you that much more. So just be as much of yourself as you can be, and start small. Start with like the core people you would need to just shoot like a 5-minute nothing, like, you know, test directing exercise, and then they will have some people on the periphery of their network that they know on each side, and you can sort of build from trusted relationships as opposed to having to pick every person on your team. You grow it organically from the core of a good 3 or 4 people.
I mean, it really, again, also depends on from which perspective you're approaching it. If you're a director, if I'm directing and I was on set all day directing a music video, I wanted to have the people I work with a lot because they understand how I work, and then we've done that learning together. So at this point, when we have certain constraints, we just know how to work because we don't have the time, for too much stuff to change. And if I'm approaching something as a producer, I am kind of asking myself, do I want to spend the next 2 years of my life working on that person's idea and vision and being their partner? Because I'm going to be committed to it from making the film to the sale of it and then some. So you also don't want to be working on a project that gets abandoned, because it's going to be challenging and it's going to be hard, and I don't think that a lot of people realize how difficult it is. And you have to be consistent, but you have to also be persistent.
Where do you share your passion? And Forrest, what would you recommend for somebody? Like, do you volunteer to be a PA on a film set? Do you go onto a meetup group? I mean, what is the actual process to meet those people that are so cool? You guys, basically.
Sure, yeah. Well, everyone on the sort of the lower end of the film spectrum in New York, you work multiple roles. I mean, I've been a PA, I've been a UPM, a line producer, a driver, a key grip, a dolly grip, whatever. If I can pick something up, I can be on a film set.
But not union.
Yeah, I
Can't do that on a union set.
I said low budget. So,
Okay.
so do that. Get in touch with, we have a listserv at NYU that says, I'm available for sets. Here are my specialties, and people will bring you on, and you can work a couple days. You could do it for free and get into those networks. And so long as you are competent and do a good job, people will want to work with you. And there is no shortcut to that. Like that, it's just, if you're a hard worker, you will work hard.
I've had so many internships, and even when I was at school here, and I think, I went from investment banking to consulting when I was an undergrad. It's I think I figured out stuff as a process of elimination. But when I was even at school here, while I was at Stern, I interned at IMAX, and then I interned for Ted Hope. And it's you maintain those relationships and you build great industry connections and mentors in that way. And I think those are also people you do want to end up working with.
And you also take advantage of what's available to you. You're here at NYU, right? So this is a huge resource. And so you really just have to put yourself out there and take advantage of the resources that are around you, that are available to you. And don't be afraid to ask questions and to actually talk to people.
Thank you, audience.
Yeah,
You're
thank you, everyone.
fantastic. Thank you,
guys.
panelists.
Thank you.